welcome to segment 2, being filmed on Tuesday, June the 16th. Our guest in this segment is Darren Laur of Personal Protection Services. I hope I got that right. Okay. And I got an email from a friend a couple of weeks ago saying that I think her niece or a friend's daughter had, Darren gives talks in schools about bullying, I guess.
Yeah, everything to do with cyber issues, cyberbullying, everything to do with cyber safety.
Okay. And hearing the talk, it had a big and positive impact on the girl. I don't even know what grade she was in. So that's how you ended up here.
Yeah, it's first, thank you for inviting me to the show.
Well, thank you for doing this.
My wife and I, we run a family company where we travel internationally now, teaching on the issues surrounding cyber safety and digital literacy, and a part of that is to do with cyberbullying. And we've reached approximately 225,000 middle school and high school students. So it's likely she was either a middle school or high school student. And during probably the past 6 years of presenting this program, to date, we've now have conducted about 105 interventions now, where after students who have heard us speak on the topic will approach us at the end of the presentations, either directly or days after, looking for some guidance or some help because of self-harm issues to deal with a whole variety of different issues, but more specifically cyberbullying.
Yeah, so we were talking about exactly this just before the show started, and I said, well, it's shocking that, I mean, there are these big problems, and like me, when I was in school, you feel you have nowhere to turn until somebody comes and gives a talk, and there's somewhere you can go to try and get some help. I mean, but then you said something very heartening, which you said the courts, I didn't even know this, the courts are pushing the schools now to take responsibility for bullying that's going on, because it goes on all the time now.
Absolutely. The courts in this country have recognized that schools have a part to play if there's a nexus of the bullying activity back to the school. So in other words, if the student, as a result of, and I like to call it pure aggression rather than bullying behavior, because everybody seems to be taking this word bullying and labeling everything as bullying when it's not. It can be mean, rude, or disturbing behavior, but not necessarily bullying behavior. But what the courts have said is that, hey, schools, if a student is not feeling safe within your school as a result of bullying or what I call digital pure aggression, then you as a school have a responsibility to ensure that you're providing a safe educational environment. So there's a legal onus being put on schools and districts, and most of them know about that, and most are doing the best they can to deal with this issue. But in today's real world, where we're seeing so many cutbacks, it's hard for schools to keep up. I mean, I remember, just locally as a good example, we helped a young middle school girl who was cutting, and she came to us at the end of the presentation looking for help. And one of the only cutting programs here in Victoria where she could go for help lost its funding. Gone. So as a result of that...
I don't even want to ask, but what is cutting?
Cutting is where young people or even adults will cut themselves. And there's a whole variety of different reasons why they do it. And basically because they're in that state, they're in a psychological state where the self-harm allows them to take some control back from what they perceive to be an uncontrollable situation they find themselves in, as one example, right? But there's many reasons why they cut. But what was frustrating for me is that when that young person came to me for help, where I was able to send them to a resource, that resource is no longer here. It got cut. So unless the family has the money now to proceed to hire a private counselor, there wasn't really necessarily a place that I could feed her to in order to get that help. Now, in the long run, I was able to find somebody in the community who took her on, but it's a real challenge that a lot of the schools and families face in today's real world.
You said a few minutes ago that I get the feeling that bullying is right now a big problem in schools. Am I?
It's not. I mean, the media makes it out to be. I don't want to downplay it. When it's happening to you, it's a big deal, right? But peer-reviewed research is showing us in our country about 1 in 4 students are targeted. So between 20 to 25%. Now that's 20 to 25% too many, in my opinion. But
That is huge.
but it's not as big as what a lot of people think it is, right? Like I hear a lot of people saying that this is at epidemic levels in schools, and it's not. Most students that I interact with on a daily basis through our company are very decent human beings. They're very respectful of each other's differences and what makes us human, right? But the reality is there are some out there that will still prey upon others for these types of crimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of let off on my own way, and I've missed all the questions. But so, what's the biggest online issue that youth and parents?
Yeah,
should
you know
be
what?
aware of?
Years gone by, it used to be everything surrounding sexual predation issues, where we were very concerned that our kids would be hunted by online pedophiles. It's still a reality. It's becoming more of a rarity because of our kids are becoming more educated. I think the biggest risk to our kids right now is everything to do with what I call their digital dossiers. And what I mean by that is that everything they're doing online is now becoming a record of who they are. And what we're now seeing happening is at post-secondary levels, college, universities, and jobs, they're now looking at our kids' social networks and using them as filtering mechanisms to make decisions. Is this the type of young person I want come to my college or my university, or is this the type of young person I want to hire just based upon what they're doing in their social networks? So a lot of the kids believe that just because their privacy settings are set, that nobody but their friends will be able to see what it is that they're saying or doing, and nothing could be further from the truth. And through my presentations, I demonstrate through case studies how some of the things that our kids are doing online today, although funny today, are coming back and really haunting them later on when they're trying to get into a college, university, or job. So I'm really concentrating on getting the kids to understand that everything they're doing online is public, permanent, searchable, exploitable, and for sale. And because of that, nothing is ever private. So you got to be careful about what it is that you're saying and doing online. Having said that, a really good digital dossier is like a digital resume, and it can work very beneficial. It can be very beneficial to a young person who's trying to get into a college, university, or a job if they're using it in a very positive way. But if they're using it in a less desirable way, it will come back and haunt them later on.
OMG.
OMG.
Is cyberbullying still an issue?
It's still an issue, as I said. I mean, in Canada, about 1 in 4, between 20 to 25% of students are still being targeted.
Now, that's cyberbullying? How about just...
No, when I say bullying, I mean bullying overall,
okay.
right? And if we look at bullying, cyberbullying, and face-to-face bullying.
Do you think the schools or society, even bigger, is... Because, I mean, when I was in school, I was probably a bully and bullied.
Yeah.
I never even knew there was a place to turn for help. Do kids know that now?
Yeah, you know what? I think education is paying off. I see a lot of good bullying programs that are being instituted into our schools at a national level right now that are all about educating kids on this very topic. And it's working, right? But what's important for our kids is we can't expect to talk about this topic for just once and think, okay, the kids are ready to go. Because that part of our kid's brain that says, don't do that, that's really a dumb thing to do.
It's got to be big.
It's a prefrontal cortex, and it's not fully developed until they're in their early 20s. So what the research shows us is that if we want an important message to stick with our kids, we need to compound the message again and again and again and again. And this is where schools come into play, but more importantly, parents as well, especially in the cyber world. One of the things I say is that there's a real parental abdication taking place when it comes to cyber issues. Here we are as parents. We're buying these kids these digital keys to the digital highway without any kind of training. So it's no wonder that when they take these things to school, they're getting in trouble with them. And then parents are looking at the schools and saying, listen, this is your problem. It's happening at your school. You deal with it. Well, yeah, schools have a part to play, but really we as parents have a bigger part to play. And this is why it's so important that we educate our parents. But that's the toughest thing in what it is that we do.
How about in the media in general, like TV shows and music and that world?
Yeah.
Are they educating kids in the right way on...
Yes and no. A good example, I say this all the time. The hypersexualization, or what I call the pornification that is taking place of our youth in some form of media is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And if we as parents don't start talking to our kids about what the difference is between healthy human sexuality and pornography, we're leaving it to the porn industry to do that for us. And that's a recipe for disaster. But again, this is where we need to educate our parents. Beth and I were at a school of 1,300, so we taught 1,300 students. We did a parents presentation that night. 3 parents showed up. 3. So no wonder there's an issue, because the schools can be teaching one area, but if we as the parents aren't compounding that message, then it's no wonder the kids are getting these mixed messages and not really doing what we want them to do online. And so this is where we need parents to get more involved. And I think one of the biggest things that stop parents from doing that is the fear of tech. They think it's too complicated. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And that's what we pride ourselves on, is that anybody, any parent who comes to our presentation, when they leave, they will leave with a much greater knowledge on how to keep their kids safe, because it's all about parental participation, communication, and monitoring. It really is.
Okay, I won't get into the issue of teenagers listening to their parents.
But you know what? Kids love teaching parents. Here's what the kids tell
Yes.
me, though. They just want their parents to be a little bit more patient with them, right?
Okay, well, we'll move right down to the last question because we got 30 seconds left. What do you want to say to sum up?
I think what our kids are doing online is really, really cool. And there's no doubt that kids who become really good digital citizens will have an advantage when it comes to post-secondary opportunities and job opportunities of the future. It's just that we as parents need to be there. We need to mentor our kids. We need to scaffold them as they're growing up to make sure that what they're doing online is appropriate and will work for them rather than against them.
Thank you very much, Darren,
Very
Laur.
welcome.
And it's up to all of us also to build and have the society within which the kids are all growing up, because I think that is as important as anything else. You know, the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. You know, really, that's our society, and we should really be careful about who's running the society and who's creating the world that the kids grow up in. Thanks for watching this segment of Citizens Forum.